Why is it when someone's got ex-Google or ex-Facebook on their LinkedIn profile, everyone just hangs off their every word like it's gospel? As a career changer and now senior software engineer, maybe I see the world a little different. But one thing is for sure, I do not feel like a failed engineer because I don't work at an acronym company. But am I supposed to? Do you? Should we? Here are 5 reasons why you're not a failed engineer for not working at an acronym company, and anybody who thinks different is quite frankly a massive doo-doo head. I mean, the obvious one is that you can't put ex-Google or ex-Facebook on your LinkedIn profile and sell a second-rate course on cracking the code in interview, obviously. I came into this industry to do 2 things. Number 1 is build some cool stuff, and number 2 is make a lot of money. Now, thankfully, so far, I've been on pretty well. And guess what? I've never stepped foot inside a Google office and probably never will. By the way, instead of saying MAANG or FAANG, I am just going to say the acronym companies in this video. So I think a lot of you will agree, but if you don't, please let me know, that the fascination around the acronym companies lies in 5 different areas. Number 1, you get to work on really cool stuff, and apparently no other software engineering company in the world does that. Number 2, you get paid more than any other company, which might be right. Number 3, the best engineers in the world work at these places, and if you don't, you're not the best. Number 4, if you cannot get into one of these companies, i.e. you fail an interview, then you are a rubbish engineer and you should just go work at one of the other hundreds of thousands of companies around the world. And number 5, if you work for one of these companies, you are then set for life. So let's start with number 1. Working for an acronym company means that you work on really cool stuff and no other company in the world is doing cool stuff. Amazon, Google, Netflix, Meta are 4 companies. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. Amazon has Prime, AWS hosting, and the e-com side. Google has search and YouTube and a few other bits. Meta has, Meta, and Netflix has the streaming service. So they each have their own individual area that they work in. Obviously, some are larger than the others. Some have sidestepped into different domains. Yes, the architecture and setup design behind them is huge and it's amazing, but they are just 4 companies in 4 specific areas where their main money is made. In the USA and UK alone, there are over 550,000 tech companies. Yes, you heard that right, 550,000 tech companies. They are ranging in areas such as pharma, healthcare, health tech, pharma tech, fintech, science, deep tech, space tech, AI, blockchain, edtech, and more. The list goes on and on and on. The average developer at one of the acronym companies usually just works in one area. So you'll have your given area, which is web development or whatever it is in AWS. It might be hosting, or whatever it is in Netflix. It might be streaming, and you won't sort of move between domains. As much as they sort of give off that startup vibe, like here's some free food and a slide, it's not really a startup feel when it comes down to the work. As we know, because most recently some highly paid engineers were let go because they bought toothpaste with their food allowance. Now let's compare that with the last company I worked for, where I worked in the data engineering team. I worked across the data engineering squad, but hey, I didn't quite enjoy it, so then I did an internal move and I started working in mobile development, and I did some web development, and it was fantastic. I could move about and try different things because my skills were needed where they were needed, and they were happy for me to upskill where they needed skills. I get to rotate through teams, as I mentioned, and contribute where I can and learn where I can. And that is just one of the reasons I enjoy working for startups or scale-ups or even companies outside of FAANG, which are so huge in their domain that you very much get siloed into one area, which is usually 10,000 lines of legacy code. That's probably on the short side, probably 100,000 lines of legacy code by now. There are so many tech companies around the world doing super cool things and tackling really, really cool projects. For example, in the UK, there is a company called Fuse Energy, which has just raised $50 million, supplying renewable energy to homes and businesses, and their tech is really cool. There is also another company called Octopus, which is one of the UK's leading energy suppliers. Their proprietary algorithms are so good, it's now split off into its own company, Krakenflex, and is growing exponentially across the US and the UK. By the way, I'm not affiliated with any of those companies. It's just I love tech companies that are doing really cool things and solving really cool problems. As we also move into the areas of AI and blockchain, there are so many cool companies at the frontier of technology, giving people the opportunity to drive innovation in areas where we've not even built software before. Therefore, the myth that you only get to work on really cool stuff at an acronym company is well and officially busted. And number 2 on our list was that you get paid way more than anywhere else if you work at an acronym company. Now this one is a little bit difficult because it is true you do get paid well, but let's break that down to how people are getting paid today and understand that it might not be as much as it used to be. Now the acronym companies pay a lot of their staff in RSUs. A lot of companies can't compete with that because obviously these are huge companies operating on the stock market. However, and this is a big however, not everywhere in the world is equal. For example, a senior software engineer in the UK working for AWS may have a 140k total base with 60k RSUs over 4 years, but the same engineer in the USA would be on about $300,000 to $400,000 total compensation. And again, the same engineer in Poland would be on about $40,000 total compensation. These are figures I've taken from friends who work at those companies and from Reddit as well, by the way. But yes, Acronym companies do pay well because they can offer a combination of RSUs and obviously above average salaries, but it's also very highly dependent on where you are located in the world because they will only pay relative to the space that you're at. But what about us mere mortals who don't work at the acronym companies? What can we expect and how does it compare? Well, I'll be absolutely honest with you. In London, depending on the area that you work in, you can make between 100 and 150,000 pounds a year as a senior software engineer. There are blockchain companies, there are fintechs, there are edtechs who are paying six figures for senior software engineers in the UK and in Europe, where the cost of living is a lot lower. But quite often in UK and European companies, you don't often see RSUs being given, not ones that are actually worth anything anyway. So basically, yes, you can earn marginally more at an acronym company than you would at a company that isn't. Especially if you look to get to levels of E5 and above, they pay very well. But I hope what I've just explained to you shows you that you can earn good money, if not at, but close to what FAANG people can earn minus what they're getting through the RSUs, which obviously acts as a pretty good bonus. But if you want the biggest money, it's probably going to be a move to the USA. Now, given all that, working at an acronym company and working on cool projects obviously means you're the best engineer in the whole wide world, right? Let's discuss that. Whoa, let's take a step back here. This is one of the myths or one of the assumptions that I actually have a huge problem with. Over the last 5 years, I've had the absolute pleasure of being mentored and working with some of the brightest minds in the software industry. I've worked with a mobile developer who could write Swift with his eyes closed. He could build enterprise level software in a weekend with Swift done complete. I've also been extremely lucky and been exposed to some really clever engineers who are such amazing problem solvers, it's unbelievable. I've worked side by side with them and been guided by them in building extremely complex systems for government and agencies. And most recently, I had the pleasure of being mentored and working with one of the most genuinely intelligent front-end developers I've ever met in my entire life and probably will ever meet. And guess what they all have in common? None of them have ever worked at any of the acronym companies, they have no interest in working at any of the acronym companies, and they're not trying to sell you a course on cracking the coding interview. Now, of course, without bashing them too hard, credit is due where it's due. There are obviously some very clever people working at these acronym companies. The architecture and systems behind, for example, Netflix, serving millions of people films and videos every day is extremely complex, and it's not just a simple mind that can comprehend or implement them. It takes incredible guidance and an incredible team to put that together. So I'm not bashing you guys. Great job. The point I am trying to make is that there are intelligent people across all areas of software engineering, not just at the top tier companies, but at companies which are solving problems you may never even heard of. Okay, but what if you do want to work at one of the acronym companies and you fail the interview? Does that mean you're a terrible engineer? Look, on a personal level, if you do want to work at one of those companies, it's a great goal to have and something you should work towards. The interview process is quite complex, but mostly nowadays it seems like it's been hacked and gamified. There are so many resources out there now which are essentially teaching you how to game the interview. However, like myself and hundreds of thousands of other engineers all around the world, banging out leak code for 6 months just does not seem that appealing to then go into a job where you are not writing algorithms anyway. I would honestly say interviews for startups, scale-ups and non-acronym company interviews are generally harder because they are more tailored to the role. You normally have a take-home test, you might do a bit of whiteboarding, which is more about the systems that they use, and they're based around the things that you will do every day. So if you're applying to be a front-end developer, for example, you will have an interview which is tailored around being a front-end developer, so you actually have to know your stuff. I would quite honestly be happy if the next 20 years of my career consisted of working for startups and scale-ups and possibly building the next unicorn of tomorrow. Not passing the interview stage of an acronym company does not make you any less of an engineer. Like we've already been through, there are a ton of great companies out there. There are a ton of different interview processes. It's just time to suck it up and move on. It might not be for you. It ain't for me, it ain't for everyone. Now let's tackle the next one. If you work for an acronym company, you are set for life. Now I'm not gonna lie, working for an acronym company does open up a lot of doors for you. If you have ex-Google, ex-Netflix on your resume, it will open you up to a lot of interviews, especially with other acronym companies because they love hiring engineers from between themselves. There's always been a level of superiority seeing somebody's LinkedIn profile where they say I'm ex-Google or ex-Meta, and people seem to flock to everything they say, even though 99% of what they say is just generic advice, and quite a lot of times, to be honest with you, it's usually rubbish as well. It really annoys me, but it's the way the world works. You will have more doors open to you working for an acronym company. However, and again with the big howevers that I like to deliver, you can open up just as many opportunities working for a company and delivering a capstone project. For example, if you were an engineer, founding engineer or lead engineer at a health tech company that raised hundreds of millions of pounds or saved thousands of lives, that would be a huge plus for your career. Or if you worked for a fintech firm or a quant firm where you are generating millions of pounds in revenue, you can guarantee that you will be being headhunted and other fintech firms will be all over you, offering you silly money to come in and work for them. So yes, the acronyms do open up more job prospects, but if you can also work for a company where you deliver enormous amounts of value, which there are thousands of places you can, you will also have a lot of good opportunities. So to tie this video up, basically what I'm trying to say is that you are not a failed engineer if you do not work for the acronym companies. I love working for startups and scale-ups. I love tackling new interesting problems. I love working across the stack, and quite frankly, working for them and being in an office 5 days a week does not tickle my fancy whatsoever. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Does it aggravate you when you see this level being put on engineers and put on people when there are so many other interesting things going on?